All right. Welcome everybody who is watching this today. Um, I'm Karen Kierstead. I'm the programs manager at the Association of Nova Scotian Museums. Um, we always want to acknowledge first and foremost that we are living and working in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people whose ancestors have lived here since time immemorial. And on behalf of my family and ancestors, I just want to say a big thank you for sharing this just wonderful land with us. I'm joined today by Thea Wilson-Hammond from the Lake Charlotte Area Heritage Society, which operates Memory Lane Heritage Village. And as part of our track program, we are doing a series of knowledge sharing sessions where we get together with people from the museums across Nova Scotia and we just chat about the cool things that they are doing. So that's what brings us here today. And I'm going to ask Thea to give a little introduction to herself, first and foremost, and tell us a bit about Memory Lane before we get into the meaty questions.
Thanks, Karen. So yes, my name is Thea Wilson-Hammond. I'm the executive director um, for the Heritage Society that operates the museum, and I've been in that position since 2004. I've also been a volunteer with the organization since 1995 before that, so I came as a volunteer. And we operate Memory Lane Heritage Village in Lake Charlotte, which is 45 minutes east of Dartmouth on the number 7 highway, and we are a 1940s living history museum with 18 buildings, and we also operate the Eastern Shore Archives.
Wow, that sounds huge.
It it's a lot of roofs to
Yeah.
maintain. We get about 13,000 visitors a year. We just actually last year got back to pre-COVID
Oh, wow.
visitation. So it was a long old haul
Hmm.
to get back to 2019. But we're there and we maintained that number this year and added a little bit. So we were very, very pleased with that. And because of the nature, I think, of our operation with lots of different buildings and lots of uh, being located on the Eastern Shore, which receives 3% of the total tourism traffic of Nova Scotia. It's a an upward battle to
Mm.
get visitors to come to Memory Lane. And because of that, we do a lot of different things to make ends meet. We have 8 different special events annual special events kick off the season with our cold water seafood festival and end in November with our walk through Christmas past. And those events are really significant to revenue income, but also to diversifying our audience. And we also host weddings, special events. We have a theater company that works out of our buildings, and a lot of different other irons in the fire. So because of that, we utilize a lot of volunteers, which is what we're going to talk about today.
That's right. Yeah. Um, I know that you sort of redesigned and relaunched a new volunteer program. Can you talk a little bit about traditionally what roles volunteers played within the museum or the society, and then what prompted you to sort of look at what you were doing and
Yeah.
make some changes?
Yeah, so the roles that volunteers play haven't actually changed with this revitalization project, but Memory Lane was founded by volunteers. It's a heritage society, has a volunteer board of directors, and the creation of Memory Lane as a site was very much it was a journey between 1995 and 2000 when we opened our doors. It was headed up entirely by volunteers to create that site, and so there's an initial um, community stakeholder situation already in place. Um, we just celebrated our 25th anniversary. And so we actually went through this whole journey of going back and identifying all the volunteers that have been with us
Oh,
over the
wow.
years so we could invite them back to the 25th anniversary celebrations, those who are still not with us. Um, and so, we're very volunteer based to begin with, and until we became a CMAP museum, which I think probably happened in 2005 or so, it was, very volunteer run as well. Um, so traditionally, volunteers have been involved in the organization from at every aspect, from maintenance to operations to um, collections, really everything. So really what spurred on this sort of revitalization project was in 2016, our CMAP evaluation, our museum evaluation, I think did identify that our volunteer management practices were probably, I mean, not deficient, but certainly could do with some work. And
Mhm.
that actually initiated us putting um, improving volunteers and being focusing on volunteers in our strategic plan for the next 4 years. So 2016 plus 4 gets you to 2020. Of course,
Right.
2020 was COVID. So we had that sort of task in our strategic plan, and then we did our new strategic plan in 2019, in December of 2019, and it had really a lot of volunteer related tasks, so actions associated with it,
Mhm.
and then COVID happened, and
Mm.
so then everything just blew apart, and so there was this loss, and I think every organization went through that, loss of volunteers during that time,
Yeah.
breakdown of sort of the practices that people were used to. Volunteers who had come out for events, events didn't happen for 2 years, so that just kind of draining away of volunteers. So we, but it also at the same time, COVID helped us to understand how much more volunteers can do, because we had to ask volunteers to do more things than they were
Mhm.
used to doing.
Mm.
They had to stand outside doors and take down people's names and addresses. So
Right.
confront visitors in a different way than they'd ever confronted visitors before.
Mhm.
They had to socially distance and do tasks separated from each other. There were things like that we had to find workarounds for things that they did that they didn't do before, and that kind of actually showed us that, hey, you know, people can change and they can take on new skills, and they can thrive from that. So there was a little bit more of awareness too of like, oh, just because you've always done this task doesn't mean you
Mm.
can't do this as well. And so there was a lot more conversation happening with volunteers too about what they were comfortable with and
Mhm.
what they wanted to take on doing at that time. So that kind of coincided then with the the Community Services Recovery Fund, which was a national
Right.
federal program that was specifically designed to look at nonprofits recovering from COVID. And they
Mhm.
had a number of different areas that you could apply for money. It was a very involved application process.
Mhm.
I did it partly because we have been thinking about improving our volunteer program and
Mhm.
recruitment and all of these things. Um, and so that application led me to like really looking at how we handle our volunteers and where we might be deficient in terms of best practices. So where did I go to find the best practices? There's an organization called Volunteer Canada. It's a national organization. So I started there. They have something called the Canadian Code for Volunteer Involvement, the CCVI, and they actually have an audit process as well. So you can get the code and a lot of other resources for free from Volunteer
Mhm.
Canada. You don't have to be a member, but for $100 a year, you get a membership, and then you actually access their audit. They have an audit document, which we were very interested in looking at. So that's why we paid the $100.
Hmm.
So just going back a little bit before applying for this grant and before we even knew the grant existed, as part of our whole process of looking at renewal, we had the board had formed a volunteer support committee to support me in that role of trying to figure out, what could we do about volunteers? How could we better improve the program? Then we landed on Volunteer Canada. Then we landed on the code of conduct and the audit. And they have these sort of standards, these 12 standards that they want you to try to, or 10 standards that they want you to try to meet. And that was the structure by which I used to apply for this grant. That basically we wanted to take ourselves through this
The
process
process,
of
right?
looking at these 10 standards. Can we meet them? Do we meet them already? Where are their gaps, and what can we do to improve? So of course put on my grant writing hat and wrote the grant, um, and then promptly, moved on to the next thing.
Right,
And I think what it was is like we realized we couldn't really take this on with the current capacity that we had.
right.
We were
Yeah,
going to need to have another person to hire. We need to hire somebody
yeah.
um,
I
to
feel
really
like
do it right.
that's something that we hear from a lot of museums when they're talking about like they know they need to do something about changing the way they engage with volunteers, but it's either a burnout situation where like they have
Yeah,
enough on their plates that they just can't add anything else,
yeah.
or can't figure out how to find someone to assign from
The
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 board or
yeah.
whatever. So that like, did this idea come from the board? Like that idea of having like a committee or like a little working group or team or whatever you call it. Like I think that's something that other museums could consider that are
Yeah.
having these
Well,
questions.
so I think one of the things that we do is we do ask our membership and our volunteers are members. So if you volunteer 10 hours a year, you automatically get a membership for the following year. And a
Okay.
membership into the society means that once you're a card carrying member, you can come to the museum free of charge
Hmm.
for the season, and you get discounts on merchandise, and you get discounts on food, and you get sometimes also free admission to certain special events. So there's a
Hmm.
little bit of an incentive to being a member. So
Mm.
we've always had it, I mean, for years, we've had it that if you volunteer 10 hours in the year, the calendar year before, you get a membership the following year.
Mm.
Um, so that kind of, that's one of the ways we give back, I guess, to the volunteers, and most of them anyway are going to be all those things because they're doing it anyway. But at the same time, it's just it's a recognition thing. But because of that, when we do a strategic plan or anything like that, we always have engagement sessions with our volunteers, um, to talk about like what should we be doing next. And so I think we're hearing that voice, the board's hearing that voice.
Hmm.
And so that committee that the board struck, that was, probably partly driven by us wanting to tackle, we'd identified in the CMAP review that this was an area that we could do better on. And it's sort of like, okay, you know how are we going to address this? Let's form a
Hmm.
committee so we can talk about how are we going to address this. And and so the committee then did a lot of looking at, so I think it was actually a committee member who found Volunteer Canada in the first place
Hmm.
and sort of said, oh, they look like they have some good resources. And that sort of went to this sort of, okay, what are the things we could do ourselves? And then and I looked at it and went, oh, I think this is a bigger project. Let's try
Right.
this grant program.
Yeah.
Um, I think we could have moved along without it, but we certainly, were able. So we were successful.
Hmm.
That's, we were successful in getting the grant. I think there were very few museums that got grants.
Yeah.
And in that program is a lot more social service based nonprofits.
Hmm.
Um, and we got $62,000.
Wow.
So that was basically it was entirely put towards human resources, and we hired Emma Gascoigne uh, to be with us for almost a year and a half
Mm-hmm.
to go through this whole program recreation revitalization project. And really what Emma did was put together all of those steps and the structure and the
Mm-hmm.
documents and all of those things. Um, I think what, even if you didn't have that money, some of the things that we did could easily be done without having a person. And the first thing that we did was we had uh, basically invited all the volunteers to come and talk to us, and not talk to me and not talk to the board, but talk to
Right.
Emma sort of
Yeah.
separately. So they had the opportunity to come together collectively in focus groups. So I think
Mm-hmm.
we did 4 or 5 focus groups, and then they also had the opportunity to come and meet one-on-one with her. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, that could very easily be done by a board member too, but it basically just took it away from existing staff and people that they would
Give it a
normally,
neutral.
not
Yeah.
just, just to say, like, here's the opportunity to let us know
Yeah.
what you think.
Yeah.
And I should say, like, we have 100 or so active volunteers on our
That's what I was going to
volunteer.
ask. Okay.
So just backtrack as well. Like, we have about 100 volunteers, and those volunteers are, some of those volunteers only contribute 6 or 7 hours a year, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them contribute, you know, 800 hours a year.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so in total, they contribute pre-COVID, in and around 7,000 hours a year. And that,
Wow.
if you monetize that, that's over $100,000 at
Mm-hmm.
minimum wage level
Mm-hmm.
contribution to the organization. So, I mean, it's significant. And for that kind of contribution, you need to be addressing it, right? You need to
Yeah.
be responding to those people. And so that's why it's like, that's why it was so important to us to do this,
Mm-hmm.
we want our volunteers to be happy. But what those focus groups told us, and I don't know that it was a big surprise, but it certainly was a little bit of surprise, was like, these people aren't volunteering because it's heritage is important to them. They're volunteering because community is important to them.
Right. Yeah.
They're volunteering because they like to be there. They like
Mm-hmm.
to be with other people. They like to meet other people, and they feel strongly um, about the place that Memory Lane is.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're having a good experience.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, heritage is important because that's what we're doing, but it's really all the other things that are
Right.
keeping them there and wanting them to be there. Just that community.
Yeah, that sort of ties into the question that was rolling around in my head next. Like you've got a significant number of volunteers to start with. Um, but again, thinking of questions like if we were in a room with other museum people, the questions that would inevitably
Yeah,
come up would be, how on earth do you attract new volunteers? How did you get that many people to come on board? So thinking about those questions that we know we would be hearing, were there any strategies either previously or with your new plan that you've been employing that you feel like this is part of our formula for drawing people in?
yeah. So in those focus groups as well, what we learned, and which I kind of knew already, is so there's no voluntold in
Okay.
our organization. Um, you tell us if you've had enough. And we don't, so that pressure, a lot
Hmm.
of volunteers don't want to get involved in volunteering because they're going to feel like um, that they have to do things, and they're going to feel like it's going to grow and become a burden to them. That's why a lot of people don't enter volunteering. So they feel like, I can't take on that commitment.
Right.
So I think we've always been very much like the burden. um you let us know, and you also always have the ability to say no.
Hmm.
And people really appreciate that. That's what they told us, that they feel like they can say, what they can and cannot do, and
Hmm.
how much they want to do. So they
Mm.
don't feel obligated. Um,
Right.
and I think that's important to their volunteer experience. I think in rural communities there is a strong volunteer base, those already there,
Yeah.
because of church, mostly because of churches. And I think that a lot, when you look at our volunteer base, it's a lot originally in the 2000s and early on. Those people are, the best volunteers, the volunteers who are volunteering everywhere, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's we have one volunteer who's 90, and she's with the Legion, the Lions, Memory Lane, um, her church. She's everywhere. Those
Yeah.
volunteers, those best volunteers, generally are volunteering in multiple places. So
Hmm.
again, they're already that kind of person. Uh, so I think, like, how do we get so many? I think obviously we have a lot of events, so I think the events pull in a lot of volunteers, because you can come and be a butter person for 2 days at the seafood festival, and that's like pretty easy. So if you look, okay, so I say I have 100 people on the volunteer list. I've got the person who only gives butter out on 2 days of the year,
Right.
to people buying lobsters. But I've also got probably, I would say, a core of other than the board, which is 14, and the board does volunteer in other aspects. But there's probably about 25
Okay.
people that are contributing more than 50
Right. Like the
hours.
super
The
volunteers.
super volunteers, the ones
Yeah.
who are going and picking up artifacts, that are painting, fences, that are crawling under the buildings and doing the plumbing, the ones that
Right.
are you know, uh, there every Wednesday and Friday to meet the bus.
Mm.
Um, the ones that are animating the boat shop every
Hmm.
Saturday.
Hmm.
Those ones are racking up a lot of hours, and they're very dedicated.
Right.
So there's a whole range, right?
Mm.
Um, and getting the new ones, what I think has always happened is it's a very much like one person volunteers, and then they bring their child and they volunteer together, and then
Yeah.
now their mother's volunteering, and then they get their
Right.
husband, and then it's
They're
the
bringing
cousin
friends.
comes, and it's the family unit, and we find that we have, like, often, a lot of interconnectedness in terms
Yeah.
of like a volunteer family that's like
Right.
multi-generational,
That's
um,
really cool.
all contributing. Yeah.
Yeah. Really neat.
I'm not sure if that answered the question, but there's definitely, like, certain sets of people that
Mm.
all volunteer together. Um,
So,
yeah.
if you've got that whole range, so you've got
Yes.
your like your butter person who comes for one event versus your super volunteers who are just like there and just helping with anything and everything. Um, I think one of the questions that I also hear from people is like, well, we need somebody for a very particular role. Um, it's almost like, I'm sure you can relate to this. There's a desire, or maybe it's just automatically where people's heads go about transposing what maybe would have been a paid position had resources allowed for it onto a volunteer and make it very sort of set and structured. It sounds like the way you're describing things, you really don't subscribe to that model.
Well, we do
You have
actually.
that too?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. In the sense that, um, it's very clearly stated. Okay, so you're going to do this role.
Hmm.
Um, what would the role be? So, you're gonna greet the bus every Wednesday and Friday. You're gonna be that
Okay.
frontline person. Or I'm going to come in and do. So we have volunteers who do take on the storekeeper role and run the cash and do all that, and they do it on the closed days, when our buses arrive.
Hmm.
Or they now are doing it, in the cookhouse during the busy hours. So they know what their roles and responsibilities are.
Hmm.
Um, they have to show up. But yes, um, they also might not show up.
Right.
And I think, that then means you've got to close in. You do have to have a staff person who can.
Like a backup plan.
And I
Yep.
mean, and I
Yeah.
think that we're in that situation where we don't have a huge staff. We have, um, you know, when other than when we have our students, we're down to like about three to four people.
Hmm.
But yeah, we're not a one person shop. But I think there are volunteers that probably would be happy to take on that sort of that frontline person and show up on certain days. But you always have to have that backup plan
Yeah.
for what happens if. And in some cases, they work together with another person to do that.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it isn't it. We definitely have the reputation of not. Um, it's not like people then pull out, but it's that there's not they don't feel that pressure
Hmm.
of obligation that suddenly becomes more than something I want to be doing, but now I feel pressed into doing it.
Right. And then
Um,
I would imagine by extension there would be more inclination to show up when they say they're
yes,
going to, because it's
yeah,
not a, oh, this is a thing that I have to do.
yeah,
It's, oh, I want to be there and I know I'm respected and treated well
yeah,
and appreciated and all of the happy
yeah,
things that come along with it.
yeah.
Right.
And I think that's where the conversation, and this is where the time investment comes in.
Yeah.
Like, I think you have to support these people. They are volunteers.
Hmm.
So that means you need to let them know what their job descriptions are. This is what we learned from Volunteer Canada. This is what we formalized. Before we had job descriptions and things like that, but we didn't have it as clearly stated. We didn't
Okay.
have the same kind of structures that we put in place after the revitalization,
Yeah.
which is basically, and it was very interesting to take longtime volunteers and try to push them through this little,
Right.
it's like, okay, we're putting a framework. And they're like, just like, I
I
don't
don't
need to
need
do
that.
that. I don't
Yeah.
need that.
Yeah.
But the ones that came on,
Yeah.
the new recruits, they did need that.
Okay.
They did need that because they're starting from scratch. So you've got volunteers who've been volunteering for 25 years. They know everything.
Yeah.
And a new one doesn't know what their job description is, doesn't know what the risks of the job might be, doesn't know
Right.
where to find things, doesn't
Yeah.
know, that you are expected to do this or do that. So that has to be, and when you lose those volunteers, if you don't invest the time in
Hmm.
helping them come up to speed, because they then feel, oh, well, that volunteer's been here for 25 years. They know everything. I don't know anything. I'm not needed. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you need to invest in them.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky part because it's time consuming. It's
Yeah.
hard. And
So do
that's,
you,
but that's where we also buddied up volunteers, new
oh, okay.
volunteers to old volunteers,
Right.
take them under your wing.
Yeah.
You
Like a
know,
nice mentorship approach. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So then that was a
Mhm.
good segue. You kind of cut me off. Um, Not cut me off, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean. So I was going to ask about, like, if you approach that sort of orientation and the training and the support, obviously it has to be different from someone who's been around for 25 years and helping since like day one
Yeah.
versus somebody who came to an event and says, "Oh, this is really cool. Can I get involved in some way?"
Yes.
So mentorship is one approach that you would
Yeah.
use. Do you have anything else that you think would be like helpful advice to museums? That I think sometimes because we're so overloaded, it can be easy to show people what they need to know right now,
Yes.
but not necessarily keep that long game in mind,
In
right? Like, oh,
mind.
I'll show
Yeah.
you that later. Or, like, how do you balance that?
Yeah. So we do volunteer orientation sessions at the beginning of the year. They're they come with mixed attendance.
Of course, yeah.
Um, Sometimes you pick up volunteers in the middle of the summer and you haven't had a chance to take them through orientation. So we have recorded those. We've also started to do them on Zoom so that we find it's easy. People are quite open to the idea of doing the orientation
Yeah.
on Zoom. It's easier for them, and we can do it in the winter months. And then we record that as well, so we can send them a copy of the recording.
Yeah.
Do they read the volunteer handbook? Maybe. I think partly they do. I hope they
Yeah.
do. So, we put a lot of structures in place around like those sorts of things. And then we also like I think a lot of it is about the conversation with people. So
Hmm.
you give them incremental learning. You start with the little things. Here's the butter, blah blah blah. And so sometimes the feedback is, well, all that person always gets to do the butter. And you got to be kind of wary of that, right? Because it's like, you're right. That person always gets that butter roll. Butter roll is kind of like an exciting one because you're giving out butter and that makes everybody happy. But you have this tendency to give that role to the same person every year because they know what they're doing.
Right.
So then you try to, okay, talk to the butter person and say, look, could so and so be with you for the butter? That
Hmm.
gives you an opportunity to go and enjoy the festival, but
Hmm.
then you guys are working together, and now you now have two butter people instead of one who knows the ropes and knows where to find the butter and is autonomous and can do all the little
Right.
things so that you don't have to, so it's that kind of thing is trying to um and we've run into that where we've someone who wants to be a barn animator, and the person who always does the barn animation is kind of like,
Mm.
okay, now there's another barn animator, but now, well, like let's you impart the information to them and work together. And now
Yeah.
you suddenly realize, oh, like actually it's kind of nice because it now means I can leave here. I can
Hmm.
go, I don't have to do all 10 school tours.
Mm.
We can now go, oh, now we've got two people who can do this job.
Yeah.
Um,
That made me think of something, um, I don't know. One of the things that I have heard both in like my personal volunteer life and also like through work is that sometimes people will say, "Oh, I can't get involved or I don't do that because Fred always does that.
yes.
Sally, that's Sally's job." And there's like a reticence on the part of the potential volunteer because there is a very visible role that someone is filling and they don't want to step on anybody's toes or cause
Yeah.
conflict or whatever. What have you seen that? And like I
Oh,
would
yeah.
love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, absolutely for sure. And I don't know that um I think that exists for sure. Um Again, I think it's that really uh the communication is really important. So with the
Mm,
established volunteer, to try to soften and have that conversation and say, you know, can you support this person in learning your role? Because
mhm,
you're really good at your role, and you really understand this, and so it'd be really nice to, this person's interested in this. Then it basically grows. It doesn't, it doesn't, it's growing that because it means that there's more opportunity.
mhm,
Um, so if they're willing to do that, then that's great. Um, there are definitely situations where we know we don't put this person with that person, or
right.
we don't have them doing the same thing on the same day, or they don't get
Okay.
along. We know
Yeah.
that. So how do you know that? That's about being really in touch with all of those people,
Mhm,
just as and keeping track of all of that. Um, and I do think think it's hard for the new volunteer. I think that's something we've learned is that it's hard for them to come into anything because they do see that. So
mhm,
again, you've got to give them the resources and the things to learn, to give them opportunities to to come up to speed. Um, and it it doesn't always work, but I think a lot of times it does, especially if you show the person who's in that role how much they're valued for doing that
mhm,
role and for doing it so well. Like, if they're really good at that, and I think then they start to go, oh, it means I could go and do this instead.
You could have a break. Yeah.
I could have
Yeah.
a break,
Yeah.
or we could now do this on one day and this on the other day.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like, yeah, actually, that could work. Um, it's tricky. We're really experiencing this with people who started at memory lane in their 60s and are now in their 80s, 25
Mm.
years in, and they know that they can't keep going.
Right.
And we know too, or we're seeing it, right?
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of talk now about, so for instance, we've had a volunteer who's peeled carrots and potatoes. Well, she peeled potatoes every every week with the peelers. And then she had to sort of say, I can't peel potatoes anymore. It's too hard on my hands. So I'm gonna be the one who peels the carrots. People like to peel the carrots more than the potato peelers. Nobody likes to do onions. So there's someone who does the onions who likes doing the onions. Like, you get
Right.
this, there's a little pecking order in the peelers, right? Uh,
Yeah.
but anyway, so that volunteer does the carrots. But now she's at the point where she can't do the carrots. But now she polishes the cutlery and she
Hmm.
sets up the gingerbread and she folds the napkins and she does all these other little tasks, things that we never was on the list of things you did that day.
Right.
But you just keep trying to find a way for her
Yeah.
to be involved.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I think where that's going is she's probably it's trying now to say to a volunteer, it's okay if you can't do something, just come,
Right.
just be here,
Right.
talk to people. Um, that's all right too. But a
Hmm.
lot of those volunteers think they have to be doing something. So we're
Hmm.
really trying to kind of figure out now for the aging volunteers how to keep them involved. Can
Hmm.
you be now the person who hands out the brochure? Or
Hmm.
can you do, those sort of tasks, so that they continue to be uh, within the family of
Yeah. Yeah.
memory lane? Because it's that community thing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That's a really good segue into where I was going to go next was
mm,
how do you make people, because I know you also have volunteers that aren't from like the really tight
yeah,
geographic
yeah,
community. So how do you help them or the aging volunteers, whoever it happens to be, how do you make sure that your volunteers do really feel part of the community and part of
yeah,
that like the the purpose of the museum and
yeah,
your raison d'etre and all of that?
yeah. So, um, so really with this revitalization, it we were we knew that there's been a huge influx of new people into our communities during
Hmm.
COVID.
Hmm.
Lots of people bought land sight unseen. Lots of people moved into the communities, and you didn't meet them because it was COVID times. And now they're looking for community,
Hmm.
and we're actually looking for them. Like the ideal volunteer is someone who's just retired. You know,
Right.
you want, we are actively looking for 60-year-old volunteers,
Hmm.
55, 60,
Yeah.
65, because, a lot of our volunteers are 75, 80,
Hmm.
85. Um, and they know that, that's not demeaning them. That's just reality. They can't do some of the things they did before.
Things to. Yep.
So that's where that sort of buddy thing happens. But I think for the volunteers, the new volunteers that are new to the community, they've actually found their community by volunteering with us.
Mm.
So they now have friends and
Hmm.
neighbors that they didn't know before because they're volunteering with us.
Do you
So
use that as part of like your advertising at all? Because that, like, I can
uh,
almost picture it, not that I'm a marketer at all, so don't tell Casey on me. But like, I can see all like the tagline of, are
yeah,
you looking for community? Like, come
yeah,
on out. We're here. We want to make friends. We want to do stuff together. Like that,
yes,
that seems like a logical
yeah.
step, I guess.
Yeah. So we do some of that. We here's what I would say about this whole revitalization is we have now all the structures in place. We have really good policies, risk assessments. We have all those things that they want you, the tick boxes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the implementation of it is a whole lot harder because you still need the person, you still need the human resource power to implement this process.
Right.
Of the four, we recruited 40 new volunteers during that time,
Wow.
15 of which were youth. So that was
Okay.
another part of this, is we were developing and growing our youth volunteer program.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of hours of investment to do that.
Hmm.
Um, I would say we are maintaining, but we know if we want to really implement this, we need to dedicate paid staff time more
Hmm.
than what we're doing. And yes, it could be supported by a volunteer, but that you need that staff person who is it has part of that in their job description. Currently, that staff
Hmm.
person's mostly me.
Hmm.
Um, where am I going with this? So the new volunteers that you recruit who are from outside the community, have moved into the community, uh, number one, you've got to keep having that conversation with them. What did you like? I started with
Mm.
this. I didn't like that. Um, I no, I couldn't peel because I can't sit on the hard bench. Oh, well, let me get you a chair and a cushion. Oh, well,
Right.
that was a lot better. Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. Okay, well, now you get a chair and a cushion. Here's where you find it. Go and get, don't worry. Go get it yourself every time you peel,
Hmm.
or whatever it is. Um, so it's like Tigger. What does Tigger like? No, it's not honey. No, it's not
Right.
thistles. No, it's not. Well, I like spending time with Eeyore, but I don't like the thistles. Like, you've
Yeah.
got to keep working through what do they like and what are they
Yeah.
getting feeling good about until you land on the thing. And that
Hmm.
takes an investment.
Hmm.
But so you'll get 40 volunteers, and from that you get some really solid keepers who suddenly you're seeing every week. But there'll
Right.
be other people that you might have seen two or three times and then they've gone away.
Right. Right.
But they may come back. So never burn,
Yeah.
they may come back. It may just have been, it didn't work out at that time, but you may still get them once a year at the car show to stand at the gate on Father's Day. And you want that, right? You don't want
Right.
to lose that. So you
Yeah.
have to really manage them, and you have to really understand what's working for them and what they're enjoying and what they like doing, and also figure out what their hidden skill set is that they didn't
Hmm.
happen to tell you about. And now suddenly you find out they've got retail experience, or they really like stocking shelves when nobody's around.
Right.
Okay, come in on the day we're closed and restock. I
Yeah.
like doing that. I don't want to be with anybody. That's great. You know, if that's what you like doing, or I
Yeah.
just want to sit at home and iron napkins,
Right.
okay, pick the napkins up and take them home and come
Yeah.
back. So volunteer management is really important, and understanding the volunteers and all of their asks. So that's where it comes into it, the database that we have, where everything that they like to do is is uh, is kept track of, and
Hmm.
what they volunteer on, so that we track all everybody's hours and what they volunteered. So you're seeing that patterns. You've got
Hmm.
to take the time to understand all of that.
Right.
But those new volunteers, I think it's hard. I think it's hard for some of them. But I think in general, what we also know about our volunteers and what we tell our volunteers so that they know that this is what we know about them, and they hear this all the time, because maybe they aren't all as welcoming as they should be.
Right.
Maybe they aren't all invested in equity and um, diversity. They're in a there's a whole range of
Yep.
people,
Yeah.
but what they're told is memory lane is a welcoming place.
Hmm.
Everyone who walks in is welcoming, and you're the reason why it's welcoming. And
Hmm.
what we know from our visitor tracking and our exit surveys is that the number one reason people like memory lane is because of the people they meet when they go there.
Hmm.
Again, it's nothing to do with, might have something to do with the kittens, but it's got nothing to do with the 7,000 artifacts that are in the buildings.
Right.
That's secondary. It's
Yeah.
about the people they meet,
Yeah.
the staff and the volunteers. It's like out of on a visitor exit survey, it is the number one thing. Staff and
Mm.
volunteer were friendly. I had great conversations with staff and volunteers. People were so friendly, they were so helpful. We felt
Mm-hmm.
so welcomed. So if you keep messaging that back to everybody, they understand that that's what we're presenting.
Right.
That's how we're treating people.
Mm.
And that's what we expect of everybody. And they're told that in orientation as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like we do not exclude.
Mm-hmm.
We are welcoming. We accept
Mm-hmm.
who people are. That's who we are.
Right. So I can see that that could potentially be challenging just depending on a personality that you would be dealing with. Um, if you were to describe the challenges of revitalizing the way that you volunteer, how would you describe those challenges or what have they been? And then how have you overcome them? Or is that like in process? Where are those challenges at?
So um, the big challenge is having the time to invest in
Hmm.
the volunteer program. And our goal there is coming out of COVID and trying to get back to the same visitation and revenue generation. And now with better CMAP funding, that's critical. We've been a one person, 1 year, one year full-time person for a long time,
Hmm.
executive director, and that's it. And then it's just people hired in the summer. We're now kind of inching towards 2 people. Um, we really need to get to that point where we can have in a job description volunteer support and
Okay.
running the volunteer program. Um, that's like very top of mind.
Hmm.
Uh, that has to be a job in the job description that's not entirely in the ED's job description, right? We've got to
Right.
get to a point where we can afford to have a portion of time allotted to running a volunteer program.
Hmm.
I don't think I think it would even be a day a week, but it's kind of, we're trying to get to that point. Um, we're at the same time also working on having a volunteer run some of the administrative side of what we do with the volunteer program. So I think that's like that's a big challenge is trying to meet all of these goals that we put in place,
Right.
in trying to follow through. And I think that's always the case when you put in place policies and a program and everything, is keeping it going once the funding is gone.
Hmm.
And so I would say we're doing an okay uh, at that, but we definitely need to not forget that we did this and also find ways to continue to do it. The second challenge has been the volunteer database and keeping
Hmm.
track of all of this. And we're in the process of upgrading how we do that so that we can really have a good all the mechanisms, the communication mechanisms for communicating with volunteers, like we've really improved upon that, so that
Hmm.
the ease in which we can put out a newsletter, the response, the two-way conversation. So getting the volunteers up to being comfortable with using Google Forms and letting
Hmm.
us know how they feel, and also signing up for things. So
Hmm.
so getting them, they can't just call me up on my home phone and tell me they
Right.
want to be the butter person. They've got to fill out the Google form, because when you've got an event like Walk Through Christmas Past, there are 45 to 50 volunteers per day involved in that event. I
Right.
cannot have someone in the grocery store tell me they want to do something. They've
Yeah.
got to fill out the form, or they've got to call us and have us fill out the form for them. Because when
Yeah.
you get a spreadsheet, you've got to be able to filter that spreadsheet and go, these people are not available, so that I'm not
Right.
sitting there going, oh, Karen said, she hasn't signed the form. Is she
Yeah.
a yes or a no? Like, they
Yeah.
getting them to do that, they're getting much, much better at it. Like,
Cool.
it's like even the ones who said, I'm never going to do a Google form. are doing the Google form. They still write in the wrong spot and just say, I'll do anything, just let me know. But that's fine, right?
Yeah.
So like that whole like structure that we've put in place, because we use the Google Forms, we use our MailChimp to communicate what's going on.
Hmm.
So just like the communication side of things, we have a dedicated Facebook group that's just for the volunteers, so we post in
Oh,
there as
cool.
well.
Yep.
It's like that. It's not, those challenges are, I think, very close. They're being overcome, and they're working quite well, but they were a challenge. And then with our youth, the big one there is they keep growing up. Like like
See that?
they grow up, and then they're not youth anymore. And
Yeah.
sometimes they become employees, but sometimes they don't. and
Yeah.
so how do you keep finding them, right? And so
Yeah.
if you stop having children in the school system, which I know my kids are grown up, how do you find these kids? So we're still trying to figure out like entirely how to find them, but we do recruitment in the library in the wintertime. So we have like a sort of, we didn't do it last year, but we did it the year before. We sort of like a drop in, come and color some things, make some buttons, talk about memory lane.
Hmm.
What does it mean to have the job of kitten protector? Because that's one of the youth roles, is to protect the kittens during special events.
Right.
Um, make sure that they're being treated well and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so trying to find those youth is and supporting the youth again,
Yeah.
supporting them and giving them the skills
Yeah.
to do the jobs, so that they understand, that you have to wash your hands before you go to do this, or, all of
Right.
those sorts of things. Um, that's still kind of a little bit uppy downy. But we
Hmm.
partner with HRM Recreation a little bit with them. So, um, yeah, we want to grow. We want to work on that more. And a little bit of that is we're trying to do things, volunteer opportunities in the winter time, or even just like information sessions. So we have never had a heated building in the winter, except for the
Mm.
archives building, but with our upgrades to our artifact storage facility, that's heated now as well. So last year we had like a show and tell white glove tour thing with the youth, and they could come in and look at the collection
Yeah.
that was in storage, and talk about powder post beetles, and just look at things under magnifying glasses and stuff like that. So we're trying to do that. And then we did that for like an hour, and then we went and played cards at Weber's and had hot chocolate.
Nice.
So um, so just trying to do some of those things in the off season, utilizing that time, because you hit the
Mm.
the beginning, and then it's just like boom, and then you don't
Right.
have time. So we're trying to do that sort of winter activities that
Okay.
help to
The
build
building
the youth
relationship.
interest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Neat.
yeah,
So, like, with all of these changes and like thinking like the formalization, that's a huge shift for the ones who've been around a long time. But you've also drawn in, you said like 40 new volunteers since you've
yeah,
been working on this.
yeah,
What kind of changes are you seeing in who is volunteering? Because I think that's also a question that we would get if we were in a room of people, right? Is like, well, how do I meet people in the community? Or my community
yeah,
has changed, people have moved
yeah,
in, people have left, the retirees are aging, like all
yeah,
of those issues you've been speaking to. What are some of those trends that you're seeing and who is coming out now? Who's really responding to you?
yeah. So this would be rural, obviously, but um, so definitely the people who are working from home,
Hmm.
and so we're getting not a huge number, but a few, and sometimes you don't need, like, if you just get two new volunteers who are really into it, it's a game changer, right?
Yeah.
So some young retirees, like in their 60s, who are still kind of maybe doing a little bit of work, but they're kind of not homesteading, but they're sort of, they're living the rural life. There's a few of those people have kind of popped up.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of those people out there, and we're trying to figure out how to find them and
Connect.
connect
Yeah.
with them. Um, so, and they often kind of come just so now at special events, for instance, we try to always have a table about volunteering and
Oh, okay.
signage and all that sort of thing. So if you're interested in volunteering, sign up here.
Hmm.
Um, so we're getting some of those people. We've been really successful. I mean, not really successful, but we've gotten some great volunteers out of the homeschool community.
Okay.
So Francophone, there are Francophone families who are homeschooling their kids. So now we've got some bilingual people,
Nice.
which is great. But homeschoolers are also great because the kids aren't in school during the week
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
necessarily, right?
Yeah.
They've got so much more flexibility. So we have some great youth who show up for tours or tours that are happening in September and in June when
Yeah.
other kids aren't available. And of
Because
course
they
they
can.
come with their mums or their dads.
Yeah.
So I mean these are older youth, right? So they can be quite capable of animating doing the ringer wash station with a group of kids because they're like 14 or 15.
Right.
And it's great for them because they don't get a lot as much socialization. So their parents really like them to come to memory lane because they're getting some socialization there.
Hmm.
Um, they're meeting people and all that sort of thing. So we've got some really solid volunteers out of the homeschool community.
Hmm.
That was a little bit of a surprise
Yeah.
and been very positive. And then these new retirees who have moved to Nova Scotia, um, who are still very active people.
Hmm.
And so we've been really, some of our best recent recruits are people that have recently moved into Nova Scotia and
Hmm.
um, and are newly retired. And they may have followed their kids and their grandkids. They're here because of the
Right.
grandchildren.
Yeah.
So, again, like bring your grandchildren. You can come and be in costume with the kids or something like that. Sometimes that works. But they're busy people, but they tend to be busy people with the grandchildren, and so they can also show up to put up Christmas lights or whatever during the day. So
Hmm.
one of the trends I think we've seen is that we actually get volunteers out during the week for tasks that we used to have to put on a Saturday. We're going to put up the Christmas
Oh,
lights on
interesting.
Saturday, but they actually show up during the week because the grandkids are in school and
Are
they
in
have
school so
time.
they can. Right.
So being flexible about what days, because they can't do it on Saturday because that's when they're they might be
With the
taking the
family.
grandkids somewhere or whatever, or later in the
Yeah.
afternoon, but they can come in the morning. So again, it's that whole like trying to figure out, it's that conversation so you can build opportunities
Hmm.
for them to do the things that they want to do
Mm.
and not be, you got to be flexible so that you can make it work for
Mm.
them, you know.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's really
Um,
interesting. Those are good insights. I appreciate that. Um, all right. Are you ready for like my big giant question?
yeah.
So we've been alluding like we're in a room and there are other people who are hovering around us.
Yeah, what are they all saying?
What what advice would you offer to other museums that are either trying to build, rebuild, or like reimagine their volunteer programs? If you could come up with like your top few things you'd give or you'd say as advice.
I would I would put the time into understanding what you think they can do. Like
Hmm.
what are these roles and responsibilities? I'd put the time into define, like if you haven't got that defined, I would define that. Um, and I wouldn't try to um so you look at all the aspects of your organization and try to figure out where there's gaps
Mm.
that or holes or needs. Like look at your own needs first. So um sometimes for me it's just like, can you come in and write 10 checks out? I'll sign them, put them in an envelope, put the stamps on them, take it to the bank. or take it to the post office because the post office is 30 minutes away and I never get there.
Mm.
Um, so and so likes to count money. Well, okay, I usually count the money, but a second person always has to verify the count of the money. If they like counting money, get them to come in and count the money. you know, um, so trying to match up what are these things that people like to do or they're happy to do with and look at your own roles and responsibilities and look hard at the things that other people could manage without too much difficulty.
Mhm.
So sometimes you think, oh, that's my job, but I go, oh, if I could have someone do this, then I wouldn't have to do that, and then I could do this, right? Like so,
Right.
I think like be open to that range,
Mhm.
but then also you got to break those tasks down into manageable portions. So don't expect someone to be able to do all of that.
Yeah.
Just start with the small things and and be really honest about this. I'm just going to get you to do this right now. If you feel good about this and you like it, then we can move on to the next thing. Yeah, it might be boring right now, but let me know. But also, this is really helpful. Like people sometimes think, well, I just came in and counted the money. That can't be really very helpful. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you just saved me like 2 hours of time. So yes, you
Right.
that was like great.
Yeah.
So really being, clear, I guess, and taking those small steps and working with somebody to understand, that it's a two-way.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's important. I wanted to actually quickly mention, because there's a lot of talk around the whole criminal records check and all of that sort of thing. And if anybody wanted to reach out to us, we've got a policy now on that. But I know that was people found that to be a like an inhibiting thing to recruiting new people because I got to get them to go through a criminal record check. We did a lot of
Mm.
research on that, and we've come up with a policy. I think that's pretty straightforward. And in a nutshell, it's we actually ask people to register to go through the Nova Scotia Child Abuse Registry, which is an
Mhm.
online application, which
Yep.
which basically um, eliminate it. So we identified it as our highest risk, being youth and
Mhm.
children in the setting, because we have this setting where in most cases people are not alone with a child or a youth. I mean, it's a usually families are with them or chaperones or whatever, but that was the area of highest risk. So everybody does that. It's
Mhm.
free. They can submit it online. They get a letter in the mail 3 weeks later. They show it to
Mhm.
us. We don't keep it. We just log that they showed it to us, and that's that.
Mhm.
And then the second portion is then anybody who's doing anything with money, that's
Mhm.
the risk, is what's the next risk to society. So if you have a criminal record, and do we need to know that even,
Right.
right? If you're handling money or you're a board member or you're running the bar, anything that has like financial risk implications, you get a criminal record check. But if you're not
Mhm.
doing any of those tasks, you're peeling potatoes or handing out butter, you don't
Yep.
need it.
Don't worry about it. Right.
Yeah, so don't worry about it. So that because that was like a big stumbling block for us. It's like, how are we going to get criminal record checks for
For everybody.
150
Yeah.
people?
Yeah.
So we really narrowed it down to what makes sense here and what is the what are those criminal record checks actually doing.
Mhm.
And so another little tip is approach your RCMP at detachment and see if they'll do them for free for your organization. A lot of
Mhm.
them will. And if you're already paying $45 to $60 to do them, Charity Village is much cheaper. So if you can do them through Charity Village at like 25, I think it is.
Oh,
And
nice.
some people are going through like the commissionaires and they're charging them $45 to do these checks.
Mm.
And some of them are even higher. Charity Village will do it, and it's a really easy online um, process. So
Mm.
if you're going down that road, that's what we found out as being like really helpful. So I think it's like it's really breaking it down into small pieces and and just keeping that conversation going with people
Mhm. Mm.
so that you have a really good sense of what's working for people and what isn't working for them. And so if it's not isn't working for them, find out if there is a way for something to work for them, like
Right.
so that you don't write them off, like just until it's really clear that it's not going to work for them,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
I think when you put that effort in, it really is rewarding.
Mhm.
Um, and where they end up isn't necessarily where they began. So in
Right.
the volunteer experience, I think that's and I would start by looking at the Volunteer Canada guidebook, because it's really well broken down, and it's not it's not uh it just puts a framework in place for the different aspects that you need to kind of be addressing. Um, and I think it's like I think we're often thinking, what can volunteers do for us?
Yep.
But it's, what can we do for the volunteer
Yeah.
experience? Because then
Absolutely.
it will come back to you.
Yeah.
And so we have very few ways, and I mean, I know not everybody can do this. So we're very lucky to have our cookhouse, and we feed everybody.
Mhm.
So, being able to give a bowl of soup to a volunteer who's working or whatever, like that sort of reciprocation is really nice. But reward them in some way. Have a dinner at the end of the year. Have some way to bring that community together and show that they're valued. Like really we've done that very much. Just have perks for volunteering, so that and half the time they don't even use them. I mean, half the time they still pay their membership fees. I'm like, you don't have to pay a membership fee. You volunteered 10 hours, but they want to do it. So that's okay. But, like, I think you've got to give back to reap that reward. And so you've got to find
Mm.
just ways to make it, people understand that they're valued.
Mm. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And on an ongoing basis. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. Um, and I think it's hard I think we're all facing um, this aging of volunteers.
Mm.
And I think it's going to be hard for a lot of both the people who are aging out and the organizations that
Mm.
are seeing that happen. And I would just also say, like, our biggest challenge is board membership,
Mm.
board participation,
Mm.
because that's the one that's the one. Not having anybody on, like, getting board members has been okay, but getting a chair has been really,
Yeah.
really difficult.
Well, that really deviates from the whole like you can say no and
Hmm.
it's flexible and
Yep.
fluid and
Yep.
yeah, so I can absolutely see
Yeah,
that
that's where you need
that
to,
happens.
yeah,
That's a
you need
big
to,
commitment.
yeah. And I think in general, the volunteer community, people are very, very wary of strong commitments, of
Mm.
obligation. Like, and you hear that all the time. I don't want to be voluntold, or, I was
Right.
voluntold to fill this position. And
Yeah.
have said, like, I never want to be that organization that someone said I was voluntold.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like right now you're really not. It sounds like
No.
everything's going
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really well and also like up and up, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But
yeah.
it speaks to, I think, community museums are filling that role of the community part of that role,
Yeah.
and are in some cases, like that they're filling that that's where community is. It's not,
Hmm.
because it's not in the church community anymore, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
that's where it used to be.
Yeah.
That's where that community was.
Yeah.
It was in the women's auxiliaries, and it was in church functions. And so it's in Lions, and in our communities, the Lions are pretty strong.
Hmm.
Um, but where are people finding community?
Yeah.
And pickleball. I have to say, our biggest competitor is pickleball. If you
That's
could
so
just
funny.
get the pickleball players, like the
Right.
ones who are playing pickleball during the afternoons, like those are the people you want. I should really show up at a pickleball game and try to, because they're obviously they have time during the day because they're
Yeah.
going to play pickleball. They're
Yeah.
spry and young enough to like run around.
That's a good point.
They have good knees.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I sometimes I go to people like they're like, oh no, I can't come. I got pickleball, and I'm like, what do you mean
All right, time for
pickleball?
museums to make friends with pickleball. Oh, that's
Oh
funny.
dear.
Um, well, Taya, I've really, really enjoyed this chat. I think it's just been great to chat with you first, but I've learned a lot about what's going on there, and I think this is going to be really like insightful and helpful to whoever is in the room.
Okay. Well, and I just speak to, anyone who's in the room, like we've done a lot of the legwork. We're happy to share our volunteer manual if you'd like to look at it.
That's
Happy to send
awesome.
a copy of it. I mean, we've used public funds to create this framework. So we're quite happy to, um, to share where we've ended up. I mean, it won't fit everybody, but it will help with some of the policy parts that we kind of arrived at.
Yeah,
Happy to send that along to anybody who wants to take a look at it.
that's fantastic. I'm sure you're going to get
Get
some
some
requests.
just don't just if it takes a little while for me to send it, just poke me because
Fair,
I'm not
fair,
always.
fair.
I every year in January I'm going to be better at answering my emails.
Some days there's a lot though. Yeah,
There's so many.
yeah. All
Dear.
right. Well, we'll let you get back to those emails then,
Thank
because
you.
I know you want to. Um, but yeah, thank you so, so much for spending the time with me and just sharing your experience. This is really, really great. And I know everybody, whoever watches this would say thank you as well.
Oh.
And I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yeah, and if anybody has any other questions, I hopefully it was somewhat helpful, but I'm happy to uh, reply in a
Beautiful.
timely fashion.
All
Take care, Karen.
right, you too, Taya.
Okay,
Have a good one.
thanks.
Bye.